Gentleman yields back. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Wray, you articulated in your opening statement that perhaps the top concern in our country right now is the prevalence of violence and violent crime in our communities, and I think we all agree with that. One of the other serious concerns that we have is the decreasing amount of faith that many Americans have in our institutions. And among the most important of our institutions in America, of course, is our system of justice. And over the past few years, millions of Americans have begun to question whether we can still rely upon the maxim of equal justice under law and whether justice is blind and all the rest. One of the reasons for this is the very real perception that some individuals within the DOJ and FBI have abused their authority and engaged in selective enforcement of certain statutes. One example that comes to mind is the Foreign Agents Registration Act. So I wanted to ask you if you're aware that during Special Counsel Mueller's probe, there were at least 5 indictments of conservatives under FARA, and if you know how that compares to the prevalence of previous FARA prosecutions since the enactment of that statute more than 80 years ago.
I'm probably not the right person to provide a whole lot of information about Special Counsel Mueller's investigation. I'd rather, that's probably better referred to what's left of that office, I suppose. But certainly FARA that you're referring to is an extremely important tool that we in the FBI have been pushing for a while to be using more aggressively, in particular against the Chinese threat, because so much of it is reflected through people engaged in activity that we think could appropriately be pursued under FARA. So exactly how it compares, I'm not sure I have that information.
Well, here's the point. We agree with that, and I think we need to be aggressive against the CCP for sure. We're all on the same page there. But according to reports, there were as many FARA prosecutions during the previous 40 years as there were during the 18 months of the Mueller probe. George Papadopoulos, for example, stated that he was given the choice to either, quote, accept the charge that I lied or face FARA charges, and that while FARA has been widely ignored for years, the Special Counsel's Office has dusted the statute off as a prime weapon to get members of the Trump circle to talk, right, unquote. The FBI and the Justice Department used FARA throughout their investigation into Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, but nothing ever came from those charges. The Justice Department stated in its motion to dismiss the case that the FBI's closing communication, quote, made clear that the FBI had found no basis to predicate further investigative efforts into whether Mr. Flynn was being directed and controlled by a foreign power, Russia in that case, in a manner that threatened U.S. national security or violated FARA or its related statutes, unquote. So the question is, it seems to a lot of Americans that alleged FARA violations were used as either a pretext to investigate those with ties to President Trump, or that FARA charges were used to pressure those conservatives in a bid to find a connection between the Trump campaign and Russia. So regardless of the details of the Mueller probe, I get that you're not the expert on that. The question is, how could anyone see this otherwise? Doesn't it look like that was selective enforcement?
I certainly understand the purpose of the question, the point of the question. I'm not sure that I can really speak to what people would perceive. What I can say is that, again, separate from the Special Counsel's investigation, which is really, respectfully, probably not my place to comment on, I do think that more aggressive use of the Foreign Agents Registration Act is something that former Attorney General Barr and I, for example, discussed quite a bit, and trying to use it more aggressively than it had been used in the past, partly for the reason we've already talked about.
On June 3rd of this year, Politico reported that the Justice Department is now investigating a Democrat lobbying firm for failing to comply with FARA and its representation of Burisma Holdings while Hunter Biden served on its board. And up until about a week ago, when this news was first reported, there was a very real perception that enhanced enforcement is being used only against Republicans and conservatives. So the question is, can you confirm the FBI's commitment to fervently pursue these violations, as you said, more aggressively, but to do it regardless of the political party affiliations of the subject of the investigation?
I think political party affiliations should have zero place in our decision to enforce the Foreign Agents Registration Act or any other statute. And you can be sure that as long as I have anything to say about it, we're going to enforce it in an even-handed way without respect to anybody's political affiliation.
I got 19 seconds left. I'll just say that even hand in this perception that we're talking about is increasingly important in our republic, because if people if they don't have faith in the system of justice, if they think that Lady Justice is the symbol has the blindfold up and she's peering beneath it, then we lose an important element that holds the Republic together. I'm out of time. I yield back. Thank you for your time.
Gentleman yields back. Ms.